Hi there, I'm Ryan Gatz, and today I'm going to be talking about some smoke particles. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about my workflow for making particle assets in After Effects and Photoshop, and then bringing those assets into Unity. So let's take a look at what we're going to be building. We're going to be building a pretty normal smoke effect. So you'll see this particular effect all the time in burning cars. Actually, let me pause this real quick and show you some examples. So here is what you're likely to see a lot of in-game smoke look like, especially in the indie scene or in the mod community. And it's fine, but it could be a lot better. The It doesn't have the sharpness that you're looking for. This isn't in motion, but this kind of stuff lacks internal motion other than just particles sliding past each other and rotating. Um, and in general, it's just not all it could be. Let's look at some real smoke, for instance. See, real smoke has all of this interior lumpiness that gives it just a lot of extra motion going on. This kind of stuff. It'll, especially near the source, it'll have very sharp edges. And yeah, and this is the kind of effect. We won't have this kind of volumetric lighting in Unity, unfortunately, but we can get a good portion of the way there. So I'm going to walk back to this and say we're aiming to get somewhere in between this and this. So let me show you an attempt that I've made towards that. So a lot of people will, instead of using like a default round soft particle, will use a smoke asset, which looks much better, especially if you're way underneath it and you're looking up. That doesn't look bad at all, but it lacks a lot of the interior motion that I'd want. Please ignore that. That's part of another demo that I'm working on. But it lacks a lot of interior motion. Like all of these are exactly the same simulation, same settings on everything, except they have a different source particle asset. Until you look at this one, and you can see like there's a whole lot of extra evolution happening in the particle. You get darker parts, you get lighter parts. And this is what we're going to be looking at building today. Okay, so got that in your mind? Okay, cool. Now let's hop over to After Effects. So this, if I hop into my cloud composition and run a RAM preview real quick, this is the asset we're going to be building. It is a looping animation, and what we're going to do is build it into a sprite sheet that we can use. This is pretty hard to do any way other than this. I've looked at a couple solutions, including ripping some footage of actual smoke and trying to do this with it, but I am not convinced that it's possible. So we're going to be looking at a parametric noise solution for this today. We're not using any fancy particular plugins or anything. We're using all of the stuff that comes with Adobe After Effects when you buy it. Okay, so and the basic idea is it's broken down into a couple pieces. One is this shape layer that you see here. This defines the basic shape of the smoke, and then it's offset by two different sets of noise that are going to change its silhouette and, make stuff fancy. And yeah, hopefully you'll learn some cool tricks and be able to use this in your own work. I'll try to give you enough knowledge in this that you can do more than just build these pillars of smoke. Hopefully you'll be able to tweak this and use it in whatever situation you might have in your own game. Okay, So let's make me save this. Saving project, always good to save. Let's make a new one. New, new project. Okay, completely blank scene. And we're not going to be using any photo or video assets in this entire tutorial. It's all interior to After Effects. So what we're going to start with is, let's make a new layer. We're going to be working at 1K 1024 by 1024 because that's a very standard asset size. We're working at a frame rate base 30 since that's pretty much the basis of what video games run at. And we're going to have 36 frames, which is 1 minute, which is 30 frames, and then 6 more frames. And that's so that we can have a 6x6 sprite sheet at the end of this. And I'm going to have the preview resolution set to half. So let's go OK. And here's our block where all of the magic is going to happen. So to start off with, we're going to go to New, make a solid, and we're going to make a white solid. And we're going to double click this circle tool up here, this shape tool. We're going to double click the circle, give ourselves a little circle to work with. And I'm going to double click this, hold Control and Shift, and just drag it in a little bit. I'm going to feather the edge. And this is mostly for preview purposes. We're not going to use this as our final shape, but it will be useful when looking at some of the noise that we're going to make. So noise is a powerful thing in computer graphics. It's used to displace, it's used in displacement maps to make terrain. It's used in texturing all the time. And technically, I guess that's what we're doing here. So I'm going to grab some fractal noise, and I'm going to stick it on a new white solid. The color doesn't actually matter because fractal noise is only black and white. So in order to allow HDR results, make sure that in your composition settings you have, where is it? Is it not there? Is it File? Oh, Project Settings. Derp derp. In your project settings, make sure you have 16 bits per channel ticked. Otherwise, it will not be able to store the HDR results, I don't think. If I'm wrong on that, please let me know, because I've been doing that as sort of a paranoid habit, assuming that otherwise I won't get the bit depth necessary to store the HDR data. Anyway, here is our first bit of noise. You can see it already looks pretty cloudy, which is nice. We don't have as far to go. I'm going to turn up the complexity to 20. And I'm going to leave everything else the way it is. The high complexity will be useful later. So let's see. I'm going to check my notes here real quick. Okay. So I'm going to rename it so that I can remember what I'm doing. Hit enter. I'm going to call this noise 1. And I'm going to call this shape. Okay, right. No? Not good enough for you? Okay. Ah, there it goes. Why isn't it showing it? Oh. Source name. Okay. So, I'm going to right click on noise 1, pre-compose, move all attributes to new composition, hit OK. Okay, and that gives us a new composition that has all of our noise stored in it and all of the properties for our noise stored in it. So let's open that up. Bring it in front of our render queue. And now we're going to animate the properties of this noise to make it look cool. So we're going to open it up over here too. And we're going to set a couple things as animatable. We're going to set the evolution as animatable. We're going to set, what else are we doing here? we're going to go into transform and we're going to set scale to animatable. And I think that's it. I'll let you know if I tag something else as animatable. But anyway, open up effects, fractal noise, and let's look. So we got our two little keyframes right there. Currently nothing's happening. So first what we're going to do is add some evolution to this. And we are going to, you see as I evolve it, it basically just shifts the noise around. And this is going to help us hide our loops a little bit. So I'm going to go in here and set it to something like 60. I may need to change this later, but at the moment, if I RAM preview it, you can see that it just shifts a little bit, which is all we really need it to do at the moment. And don't worry, and we're going to grab this and pull it off the edge here. So this invisible frame 36 that doesn't actually exist meets up with our frame 0 keyframe. And the other thing we're going to do is put a keyframe on our scale and set it to 200. This is to get sort of that looping zoom effect that we're going to do. We're going to set this lower one to 50 because otherwise I'm not sure what the math is here. Because it's a very confusing shape trying to do the logarithmic scale to fake an infinite zoom effect. So but I can fake it pretty well between 50 and 200 because it's an easy set of numbers to work with. So we're going to open up the graph view for our scale animation, and you can see it's a straight line at the moment. That's not really what we want. So let's set both of these to be smooth, and what we're going to do is try to smoothly curve so that this 18th frame here is at 100. And there we go. So that should look nice and smooth. For the record, had I not done that, let me show you what it looks like to zoom like that. With these not doing anything. It sort of goes fast and then slow. And that's not really what we want. It doesn't look right, and it won't look right when you use it in your sprite. So let's not use that. Let's cancel. Let's walk that back in. Okay, so 18th frame right here, and you can see that by comparison, this is a very smooth zoom. Actually, let me bring that in just a little bit more. Even more. Okay, cool. Hop out of this. Okay, so this is going to be our basic noise, and we're going to use copies of it over and over and over again. Because I don't want to repeat animations on things when I don't have to. And you shouldn't either. Extra work is extra work, and nobody should do extra work. So, what we're going to do is pop this into overlay mode, make a new solid underneath it that is 50% gray. 50% gray, by the way, doesn't affect an overlay mode, but literally any other color will. 50% gray is kind of like the equivalent of a light that is black or a multiply layer shadow that is white. It just can't affect anything. So anyway, we have our noise one. And this one, oh, did I shift that keyframe over? I did. Okay, cool. Sweet. So I'm going to select it, Control D, get noise 2 out of it, which is nice. Noise 2 is fine, but currently it's exactly the same as noise 1, and we don't want that. We want a new evolution of it, so we're going to go put in a nice seed here and just tap it into any value, and we get completely random results. So I'm just going to pop this into 10. They're all equally random. None of them are going to be more random than any other. 10 is no more similar to 0 than 100 is, so just 10 is easy because we're going to do a couple of these. Anyway, I'm going to set this one to 18, and you can see that as we zoom, the two of them match up until here. And then we want to duplicate noise 1 again to get noise 3. Slide noise 3 up and stick it right on the end here. Boop, boop. So it switches back and forth quite violently at the moment, but the scale, like the zooming in effect, seems consistent, which is all that we care about at the moment. Now what we're going to do is select all of these, hit T to open up their opacity or their transparency, as the person who makes the keyboard shortcuts must be thinking, and we're going to make them all animatable. At the beginning and end, we're going to put keyframes, and of course later we're going to shift all of these keys over. So here in the middle, there's this really harsh transition as our most zoomed in noise 1 competes with noise 2. We don't want that. So we're going to say goodbye to noise 1 on this frame. And let's get rid of that one real quick. So that should be an invisible transition. It's not quite invisible, but at the moment it will be good enough and we can do adjustments later. This one still is being obnoxious about it, so let's hop in here, take that one to 0, and so now smooth, smooth. Here, this one's about to be obnoxious because it's hopping from here to here, which is way too big of a leap. So we're going to take this one down to 0, and so that it matches up with this one, pop it to 0, and you can see it's going to go through each of these. Now a weird thing happens because of how the middle frames here are calculated with their 50, 50, 50. 50, 50, 50 is not 100. And our results show that. So we're going to have to put an adjustment layer on top of everything here to bring the contrast so that it matches our main keyframes. First though, we're going to move these keyframes off to the side. Boop. So let's check this out. So you can still clearly see that we're switching back and forth between two different zooming images, but it maintains the illusion nicely. I'm going to do one other thing while I'm here, and this is for a step that will make more sense later. For this particular composition, I'm going to double the size of the frame because we're going to zoom way the heck into it later, and I want the extra information. So I'm just going to grab everything on the thing, every layer in the composition, tap S. Since everything's already selected, I can just hit 200 once, and everything's nice and big now. I can zoom in all day, and this is at half res at the moment, so looking good. Okay. Now, one last thing is we need to go in here and make a new adjustment layer on top of everything and make it a brightness and contrast layer. Okay, we're going to get ourselves some keyframes. Boop. Let's pop that in. I don't need... Just going to keep these up as reference, but I'm not really going to be touching them. Okay, so here, holding shift to snap to it, key those, and Can't reach it, but I can put keys here. Okay, so since these look exactly how we want them to, we just need to bring this middle area up to match. So let's try just with starting with the contrast. Let's put that at right about 40, it looks like. 40, that looks pretty good. We'll fiddle with its blending to make sure that it's, that might be a little much. 30. Enter. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, and then right in there it looks like 50-50. Let's put this one at 30 also. And let's RAM preview that and see how obnoxious our transition still is. So it's not too bad. It's a little back and forthy, but it shouldn't matter once we have all of our adjustments on top of it. It looks pretty sweet. So I think that's actually all we have to do here. So I'm going to hop back into my comp 1. You can see I'm way zoomed into the middle here. And that's, you know, this zooming motion seems a little fast for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all my noise layers, close them and open them back up so that we're looking at all of the same stuff in all of them. Effects, fractal noise. Okay. Fractal noise. Okay, cool. And the thing we're going to be changing here is in the transform. I'm going to make the scale less significant. Now that I have this keyframes, any scaling I do to these keyframes is going to be proportional. So I don't have to worry about that. Whoop, why can't I move? Oh. So let's throw down. Let me let myself move outside of here. Composition settings. I'm going to give myself a couple extra frames. Actually, I only really need the one extra frame. So I'm going to pop one on the end there so that I can occupy this last space. I'm going to key that. Yes, thank you, email. Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to go down to noise 2. Also key that. My scale here. Oh, sorry, keyed? Of course it is. I already did that. I'm way on top of things. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And this one just needs a key at 1. Okay. So now that we have all these, I can select them all at the same time and scale them all together. And instead of going from 50 to 200, we're going to go from 150 to 200, which will be a much less significant change and will make for a smoother animation. So I'm going to grab these and pop them right on in there. And let's preview that and see. I don't like that as much. Let's maybe instead of 150, let's just go from 100. Yeah, that's not too bad. Okay. So when we pop over here, when we actually go to render, we'll have this in full resolution, which is why popped everything into a complexity of 20 so that we would have nice little bits of detail in there. Looks a little pixely at the moment, but that's partly due to the RAM preview settings limiting the resolution that it renders at. Let me shrink all these up. I like keeping a tidy workspace with nice closed up names for everything. Anyway, here it is back in the original area, and we can see that our slower animation is happening. That black's going to cause a little bit of trouble later, but we'll get to it in a second. So what we're going to do is pop this into the soft light mode, and we're going to throw down a new black solid down at the bottom so that all our blending modes work out nicely. And we get this, which is cool in and of itself. We have a nice soft edged sphere. Say that 10 times fast. And for some things, this could actually already be a fairly useful effect. A looping animation of a hazy sphere. Oops, actually, I just realized I never changed back over here. I'm still at 37 frames, which is unacceptable. Must be at 36. Cool. Being finicky. Noticed a pop. Looked for something to blame it on. So, let's see. I want a little bit more detail in the center here. So if I lower my mask opacity to, say, 80%, I'll be able to get a little bit of that interior interestingness. You can see you get a lot of control about what everything looks like. I can expand it in a little bit and soften it to get an even more fuzzy edge. And this wouldn't be a bad particle at all. If you wanted a sort of noisy replacement for the default soft particle, this would not be a bad place to start. But it's not what we're doing. What we're going to be doing involves trying to mimic the look of real-life smoke, which has kind of this weird, it's simultaneously soft and lumpy and wispy, which is just kind of weird, actually. Like, if you look at smoke, it's a weird thing. I have no idea how people simulate it so well. I'm just constantly impressed at people who know the deep algorithms of, like, the fume effects stuff. The people who actually understand that at a deep level, I'm in awe of you. But I can still do some neat things. So what we're going to do is use what is probably the neatest effect preset in Adobe After Effects, which is CC Vector Blur. There we go. And this is a super neato effect. Because what it does is it infers non-linear motion blur based off of lightness values. That sounds stupid, but it's awesome. It'll make your stuff look like lightning if you want. And then now you have a lightning ball. Whereas before you had, I don't know, some sort of noisy thing. But now you have a lightning ball. How cool is that? Anyway, we're going to use a couple layers of a couple different effects in here. So if you want the opposite of lightning ball, and this is actually the main effect we're going to use to get sort of the lumpy look that we want, we're going to go the other direction. It makes sort of these bulbous shapes, which is exactly what we want, but at the moment it's too detailed, and we want larger lumps. So let's see. map softness. Oh, and of course, these feed into each other, so I can have one of them give me lightning looking stuff, which is super neato. Yes, I say super neato completely earnestly. So this will give us a little bit of that wispy effect, and if I come down here to direction center, I can add, oops, that's getting a little extreme. There we go. A little bit of a cloudy wisp effect on top. Direction center assumes that your colors are spirally. I really wish I knew the math behind some of this, but it's a pretty cool effect. If I were doing a thinner smoke effect, I would totally use this because it's really neat looking. But not what we're doing, though I will end up using it a little bit later. So let's see here. What was I up to? Pardon me just a second while I check my notes on how I do this effect. Oops. Okay. Right. So what I'm going to do is start off with a negative natural. Let me show you what's going on there by turning this off. So what I'm doing is I'm getting this lumpy sort of thing, which is the negative natural. It's the opposite of the lightning thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this at negative 25, so I get some nice lumps going. And I'm going to fiddle with the map softness until I get some good looking lumps. This is a little over detailed. Let me turn up the softness so that I get larger shapes. That's pretty good. And let's check out direction fading and see if this gives us some interesting shapes. Direction fading is kind of like direction center, except it assumes that a particular direction is happening on the whole. It's not always appropriate for particle effects, since something that you'll need to do if you're doing particle effects, especially ones that are going to be part of a large pillar like I'm doing here, you don't know what direction they're going to be viewed from, so you can't know which way is up. So sending your particles in, or having the motion blur happen in a particular direction, in this case, this right side is kind of considered the less wispy side, and you can see how all of these curves face that direction. If you have that kind of non-uniformity, or that asymmetricality, is that a word? If your particle is asymmetrical in that respect, it won't work from every orientation and is not always useful if that's the case. But luckily, we have direction center, which goes in every direction. Okay, so let's set this down to like 50, because its current setting's a little high. Maybe 40? Yeah, let's go with 40. Check out what this looks like. Not too bad looking. We get a little bit of lump, we get a little bit of soft on the edges. This would work fine. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit more time and play with my base shape layer that this is built on top of, in order to get a more irregular shape that'll look better when you have a whole bunch of them stacked on top of each other, because you don't want things to get too regular in terms of shape. So let's go in here. I'm going to grab the pen tool. I'm going to give myself a couple more points to work with. Okay. So broadly speaking, I've noticed that bean shapes are often really nice to work with in terms of particles. And I'm actually going to draw little loops in here too in order to get more irregularity. Looks like I need another one. So this is going to totally break my effect for the moment, but I promise I will come back and rescue it, make it look cool. Oops, don't want to just start drawing a new shape. Okay, let me reduce my expansion, see what I'm working with. So I want a shape that is kind of uniformly irregular. That may seem like an oxymoron, but I promise it isn't. You want a shape that is generic enough from pretty much any direction to be unoffensive. And also you want to be able to fit it on a square texture sheet, so keep that in mind too. I'm going to shrink this down and bring it over here. Get back in. And a little more here. This way. That way. Okay, that's not too bad. Let's see what it looks like on that shape. So you can see I get a lot of irregularity in the form. And I'm clipping on the bottom here. I think I might be clipping up here too, but I'll just shrink it down so that it doesn't, so that I can fit it on the texture sheet properly. But I kind of like where this is going. I'm going to throw down an adjustment layer to make sure that I end up with some white in the final version. Oops, completely wrong thing. New adjustment layer. I'm going to throw in a curves adjustment. And I'm going to bring up this middle here. Actually, I'm going to throw in a levels just so that I can see, just that I can get its histogram out and see what my stuff looks like. Yeah, I don't have any whites. There we go. For those of you who don't know how to read a histogram, this tells you how many of what pixels you have. So up here you have your white pixels, and down here you have your black pixels, and all the way in the middle is all of your versions of gray. So I'm using it basically to get a readout on my curves adjustment. So this was my original thing. I have almost no white. Actually, I have absolutely no white. The brightest color I have in the entire composition looks to be like 70% gray, with most of it being 25 to 50% gray and then black. So in order to shift around my levels, I'm going to drag up my middle range and bring it up towards white. And I'm going to drag this and clip my white until I start getting a couple white pixels. Because otherwise, I'm just abandoning bit depth that I could be using instead. So let's check this out. Actually, hold on. I have to check it at a couple other frames. So what I'm doing is I'm hopping around to see if I start clipping anywhere. And actually, I seem to have picked a fairly white section of this animation, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it up even a little bit more. Oops, didn't mean to add that extra point. Okay, I mean, clearly I have approached the edges too much, and I'm starting to clip. So I'm going to go down here to the shape and bring it in a little bit. And to be clear, I'm bringing in the mask, but I'm trying to leave the layer the same size. Those of you less familiar with After Effects, that may seem a subtle distinction, but I promise it's important. So let's check how this is going. Not too bad. Getting some wispy motion going on. It looks like I'm clear here on the edges. I think this might be ready for production. Before I do, though, I am going to duplicate composition 1, make composition 2, and I'm going to show you a couple other things you can do if you want a different effect. So yeah, let's go down here and work on Comp 2. Comp 2 is not actually what we're going to be using. Oops, I'm an idiot. What we're going to be using at the end, but I'm hoping to show you some neato stuff you can do on your own. So these are our main controls governing what this effect looks like, because what it really looks like is this. And then I'm running it through these vector blurs that make it lumpy and swishy. If you want it more lumpy, you can switch the order of these, and then the lumpiness will take precedence. Let me turn up my map softness and my amount. Whoa. Can get a little extreme if you're not careful with it. So I'm trying to be gentle. Let's maybe turn down my map softness. Ooh, there you go. So this will give you a completely different look. I'm not going to let that render out, but you can tell what kind of look you'd get with it. On the other hand, if I go this way with it, I get that lightning bolt effect. But that can be pretty cool if you make your wisps out of lightning bolty looking things. You can get a much softer looking steam or magic sort of effect. See how you get like these little wispy trails, which look pretty good. May hold on to this when I save this project. Oh, speaking of which, let's save it. What are we going to save it as? Why, clearly I'm going to save it as Animated Cloud Sprite 3. Okay. So let's check this out again. Huh. As a bit of advice, I didn't, while I was working on this, because I've done this particular technique before, but I highly recommend whenever you're making animated sprites, look at them at your target frame rate, which for me is 30, but also look at them at half that frame rate and double that frame rate. Ooh, that's pretty neat. It's a little wonky because it kind of shifts back and forth rather than looking like it keeps going, but I'm sure with a bit of time you could fiddle with that and make it look super cool. Let's look at direction fading. So let's change the angle of this. Yeah, and you can kind of see why it's such a cool effect. Direction fading is honestly my favorite looking effect. Just because I don't know, it looks really neat. And I think I've mentioned that I really wish I knew some of the math behind it. But this would be a really nice sweetener to a fire effect or to some steam, just to layer on top of some other particles that you're using to get some cool wiggliness, though it mostly is just wiggling because I'm layering so many of these on top of each other. Let's turn all of this down. Ooh, 210. That seems a little excessive. Let's try 50. Yeah. So here, let's show you it without. So this is the lumpy version. You can, oops, let me turn this back to a low number. So you can see as I turn up the direction fading blur, it starts lumping together similar values next to each other in this sort of weirdly curved bottom of a cloud looking thing. And I really dig how this looks. Sorry if I'm fanboying a little bit, but I'm just impressed with cool work. Whoever came up with this is a seriously thinking person. And this is the reason that I do this kind of work in After Effects and not in Photoshop, is the sheer amount of control that is lent to you to handle noise and other procedural work. Being able to dig into the numbers is a great advantage After Effects has over normal Photoshop workflows. So yeah, you can see, let's see if we can really push it before we hop back to doing proper work. Ooh, that's pretty weird. You know, let's make this really weird. Let's turn up the revolutions. So now we're clearly handling some magic things, because that doesn't look like anything. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to go into my shape and lower my opacity so that we get a little bit more interior detail. Oh yeah, I have no idea what that is, but it looks neat. And look at all this free texture we got. Especially for magic and other things not inherently built in the real world, you can get some really interesting textures and interesting effects from using these kinds of plugins. There are other... Now let's not fake. There's nothing like vector blur that I've seen anywhere else, but there are other useful effects that give you interesting textures and interesting warp effects in After Effects. Like, look at this. What is this? I have no idea, but it's freaking cool. Anyway. Clearly I've spent way too much time looking at that, and let's hop back over here to our proper useful thing that we made. So what we're going to do, we're going to pop over into our render queue. We're going to grab composition 1, throw it in here. Instead of lossless, we're going to be exporting in a PNG sequence. All the default settings are fine. Let me hop back out here, make a new folder. You're probably gonna want to make a new folder to put all of these rendered images in. Cloud 03, anim, done. Hop in here. Let's call it something a little bit better than comp1, like cloud 03 anim, and then our numbers. Okay, let's hit render and talk a little bit more about why this thing looks the way it is. So there are a couple features of this kind of image. One is that it is not perfectly circular, which is nice. Humans are really good at finding circular shapes, and actually any geometric shape. I'm sure you've noticed if you ever do a particle or you have a sample image that clips on the edge of the on a on the edge of the image plane, the human eye can pick that out very immediately. So it's important that your image end several pixels within the allotted space. It's also, if it were round, you'd be able to pick that out too, even though I'm using a pretty irregular source footage. All of this, that's what all of this micro detail is, but the broad shape of it is all from that one shape layer that I made. Playing with that will get you a bunch of different results. At the same time as being not perfectly circular, it is equally detailed on all sides. It's a little thinner on this side than it is on this side. I would consider that within tolerances, but there's no leading edge. None of these sides are sharp or differently textured than the others, and that means that you can rotate it in any direction. And also, since we're doing a zooming animation and not a scrolling animation, it can be oriented in any direction, and it's still, like, it doesn't start suddenly scrolling upside down for some reason. And that's just very helpful. Man, I can hear my computer screaming away trying to render this at 1K using 2K noise textures that it's generating as it goes. There's nothing stopping any of you from working at lower resolutions. A 512 composition with 1K noise would work just as well and would consume a quarter to an eighth of the system resources. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, oh, and the reason I was obsessing over getting some amount of white in here is otherwise you're limiting yourself. When we hop over to Unity, it's easy to bring something down in opacity, but you can never bring something up to 100% opacity. Anyway, let's hop over to Photoshop. I'm gonna undo some of the last steps here so I can save the full-size image. Boop. With all these. Actually, I'm going to save it once I've ghosted it already. Okay. Oops, did I break it? Looks like that clipped. Interesting. Okay. Well, live and learn. So I'm going to save out this old Photoshop document before I continue. Okay. Saving. Boopity boop. Bonk. Cool. Pay no attention to that. Nope. Okay. So this was the old example one, and this is the one we just made. You can see they're slightly different, but the intent is the same. Let's hop over here to where I saved Cloud 3. Cloud 3. Cool. Here's all those images we just made. Numbered 0 through 35, which is 36 images. So I'm going to make a new composition. So 6144 is 6 1024 images across. And since I have 36 images, 6 by 6 is the layout we're going to be using. Nice bright screen. Okay. So let's invert that screen so we're working on black, and I'm going to reveal my grid. By the way, if you don't know your Photoshop keyboard shortcuts, fix that. It'll make you way faster. So I'm just going to drag and drop these. They'll all come in as smart layers, which is a bit of a pain, but it's pretty much unavoidable, and it's at least fast for this step. So I of course have snapping on, and I'm snapping these to my grid points, which I have set up to be 512 pixels apart, so it makes it easy to snap regularly sized texture assets to. Gonna do this. Super fascinating work. I have searched online for animated sprite sheet packers, and I have found nothing. If anyone hears this and knows a good sprite packing program, please let me know, because I want one desperately. Because I hate the 2 minutes it takes to arrange all of these images. Oh, also, some of you might be wondering why I am working exclusively in black and white, and no, I'm not going to color any of it. Black and white compresses really well. Compared to an RGB image, a grayscale image is less than half the size. If you can keep your workflow black and white as long as possible, your hard drive will thank you, and the memory constraints of whatever game this is going into will thank you. Because you can have much larger images with nowhere near the same memory or hard drive impacts if you can keep your textures black and white. I know it may seem like I'm crushing some artistic intent, but whatever, figure it out. It's so much easier. Anyway, so we got our sprite sheet. What I'm going to do is make a new tab. Actually, first I'm going to throw all of these in a group so I don't have to look at them later. Boop. Okay, new layer, Control-Alt-Shift-E to make a flattened version of the image on top. I'm going to hide my grid. Okay, cool. I'm going to hide that. Sweet. So I'm going to double click on my background so that I can hide it too. Now I can see through to my alpha. Okay, cool. So there's a sweet pack of filters you can get for Photoshop that come from a group called Flaming Pear. And all of this is very nice. You'll probably see people use Solidify A, B, and C. If you ever see someone talking about making alpha'd out textures for leaves or for whatever, for cloth or whatever, because it will take color information and stretch it out over empty areas of transparency, which is nice because then you don't end up with weird color jaggies and dark outlines around your lovely alpha'd images. Super useful. But the thing we want is called Ghost. And what Ghost does is it takes all of your white pixels and makes them clear. And that is super dang useful. So I'm going to invert this layer so that I have it in black and white. And then I'm going to go Filter, Ghost. And as you can see, now I just have black smudges. And I'm going to invert it again so that I get my white smudges back. And there we go. It should look almost exactly the same. Here's ours. Or here's the original. There's the new ones. I think you might lose a little bit of information, but it's so much faster than any other approach ever that all other arguments are invalid. So anyway, what we're going to do is save this as, I'm going to go in here, oops, wrong folder, Cloud 3. We're going to save this as a PNG. Make sure that you leave everything but the sprites that you want out so that it knows to save alpha implicitly. And we're going to call this Cloud 03 sheet. I'm going to make a note that this has alpha in it. Now, alpha rendered particles are more expensive than if I saved this in black and white and only used it in add or multiply mode, but I don't care. There's no way to get this effect using add and multiply. You need solid diffuse, and this is the only way to get it. So here we are back in Unity. I'm gonna hide our old particle systems because we don't need to look at them anymore. No. Oh, also, stop. I'm gonna close After Effects to free up some system resources. Thank you, After Effects. Okay, I just got half my RAM back. So, I'm going to delete these because no one cares. And we're going to make some cool effects with our new sprite sheets. I'm going to hop over here. I'm going to refresh this Explorer window. Come on. No? We don't want to look at? Can I have that? I want it. Oh, it's not done saving yet. Oh, because I didn't shrink it yet. Maybe. Okay, image size. This is an unreasonable size. I'm not even sure Unity will accept a 6144 image. So I'm going to knock this down to 2048, which still gives us plenty of resolution on our individual images because they're so soft. It's really nice. If you have hard-edged images and you try to pull that, it's not going to like you. Like, now we are 100% zoomed on a 1080p monitor. You can easily blow that up double and you're not going to be able to pick out pixels because it's such a soft image. Anyway, let me save that out again. Oh, and also it's important that you save it out in white because of the way Unity tints its colors in the particle systems. It can only make things darker because it's using a multiply effect to change the colors. Saving 64%. Come on. Yeah. Alright. Actually, I'm just gonna save out cloud 03 sheet. Boop. There. Now I've saved out a PSD file. Yeah, that's all fine. Yes. That's for another demo. Though, it looks pretty good. It makes nice wispy smoke. Okay, so here we are in Unity. I'm going to come in here, make a whoa. Yeah, let's make a new folder to work in, because okay, let's hop in my smoke demo thing. Okay, this way you can see exactly what we're working on. So I'm going to drag in my Cloud 3 sheet alpha. Here we are. Set my max size so that it doesn't try to be silly about it. Apply. We're going to make a new material. I'm going to go to Particles, Alpha Blended, and we're going to associate this texture with it. So you can see we get tons of nice little cutouts. That looks super stupid, but it's great for particles. And let's name this material Matte Cloud 03 Anim. Okay, sweet. Do I have anything else to do here? So let's hop out here, make a new game object, particle system. There we are. Yay, default particles. These look super stupid. So I'm going to change their size real quick to 5, which makes them huge. And turn off their speed. And turn on their gravity. Nice one. There. Now they're going up. Speed. You can be 1. There. That is kind of the right motion that we want. But we'll get to that in just a sec anyway. So I'm going to turn on the texture sheet animator. I'm going to open the render. I'm going to throw in my new... Yeah, doesn't that look great? The answer is no, that looks really stupid. So let's tell it that it has 6 tiles across and 6 tiles tall. There we go. Now that doesn't look as stupid. Let's turn down our emission so that we can see what's going on. There we go. Look at them go. And we're going to, since we're going for 5 seconds and at 30 frames per second, ours loops every 1 second, I'm going to set my cycles to 5. But honestly, they're so similar that it probably doesn't matter. I could slow this down a lot, and I doubt you could pick out the individual image changes. So, oh wait, you can see it a little bit. Whatever. I'm playing it at less than a quarter of real time. So, whatever. You can't see it. So let's do a couple basic things. We're going to set the rotation random between 2 constants, negative 360 and 360, so that they're in sufficiently random orientations. I'm going to set my color. I'm going to leave it at white for the moment. Red? Nah. Yeah, white, just so that we can see it. I'm going to say color over lifetime. Give myself a couple keyframes. There we go. I'm going to set this alpha value to 0. Same with that one. I'm going to set, oops, get out of here. Going to make it so that it's smooth. There we go. I'm going to turn on limit velocity over lifetime. I like to have this one on all the time for any kind of realistic effect. Oops. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. I don't know why you would, but it's neat. Anyway, let's turn damping on to 0.1, and you can see some of the extra information that our work has gotten us. Oops. Totally forgot what kind of effect I was doing. Let's bring these down so it comes on nice and smoothly. And GTFOs nice and smoothly. There we go. Nice. Let's go to size over lifetime and start here. Take it a little like this. There we go, because we want it to splay nicely up at the top. And we also want there to be fewer particles up at the top. There's too many at the moment. So if we add a variety of lifetimes, say between 5 and 7, then we should have only 20% of the particles up here by the time it actually gets to the top of the simulation. Okay, this is looking not crappy. Not one bit of crap. Let's throw that out. It's kind of useless. So let's make this a campfire. So what we're going to do is start out with a nice warm color to do a little bit of fake lighting while we're here. Then we're going to go to a sooty black color and eventually to a less sooty gray color. There we go. That's not bad. We need a much higher emission rate. There we go. That's still a little crappy. Let's make that just a super saturated there. There. And I can calm this guy down. Black is very black. It's hard to come back from black. Back in black, hit the sack, and I'm glad to be back. Dulcet tones, everybody. So let's take that more like there. Shape. I'm gonna reduce my radius a little bit and increase my speed. Whoa. Oh. Decrease radius. Increase the angle. There we go. And actually, let's shift this over so we can see it from our game view too. Okay. That could be way uglier. Like that. That's uglier. So a little bit of randomness at the beginning can be pretty helpful. I'm going to turn down the speed, get it a little closer together. There, that's good. Let's make some randomness in size. Random between two constants. Let's say, let's go with 4, because I liked the way that 5 looks, so let's go with 4 and 6. So we get some suitably random crap going on in here. And since we left our start color white, we can make random between two colors and have 2 different sets of colors. So we can have some browner smoke that is also darker. Cool. We need to set our render order. I recommend that your default in your head to be set this oldest first. That's going to make it so that the newest particle renders in front of everything else all the time, which usually is what you will want. So, that's not a bad looking pillar of smoke, but there's a problem with it. It looks pretty neat, but the bottom is the most active thermally, but it's animating at exactly the same rate as those way up there at the top that you wouldn't know the difference if it was rendered with the default particle. So what we're going to do is hop back into our particle system and drag that back down a little bit. Whatever. I'm noodling. Okay, so what we're going to do, since this is looping 5 times through here, what I want is it to play more frames at the beginning than it does at the end. Now I don't want it to stop at the end, so I'm going to have to decrease that effect. But basically what this will do is make it so that the animation plays faster at the beginning. So right here, it's going too fast. Gravity, quit that. Okay. So down here at the bottom, you're going to get most of your animation. Why is this being such a butt? I'll set my dampen lower so that I can actually get a little bit of sight. Fine, I'll set my gravity higher. Okay. Oh, that looks pretty good. I dig this. Anyway, so if I slow this down and decrease the number that we're looking at, you can see that down here at the bottom, we're getting more animations happening than the ones up here at the top that are almost transparent. And that's exactly what we want. That way, it's all a matter of, not to sound like an asshole, but it's temporal resolution. You want the things that are attracting the most attention to have the most information to give, since the stuff right there at the bottom is what the player can see and be the closest to. It needs to have the time information to give the player a lot to look at. As it fades away up there. So you can kind of see some of the advantages of it when it's pulled apart like this. Each of these kind of has a life of their own. And as I add more, I don't actually have to add very many. Like, I'm only releasing 3 particles a second, and I have a fairly filled out smoke shape, especially from about right here. That's not too bad. Probably actually wanted at something a lot more like 5, but this is not crappy. 20. There you go. You want really thick smoke. And all your edges are nice and swoopy. Oh, actually, you know what we didn't do at all? It's not spinning. So let me turn this back down to, say, 15. And we're going to add a little bit of rotation. We're going to go to rotation over lifetime. No, it's size by speed. Rotation over lifetime. This currently is all rotating the same direction, which does look pretty good some of the time. Nothing wrong with that. I prefer random between 2 constants and have 2 opposing values, because then it sort of revolves against itself, which I think looks pretty nice. Q. Cool. Neat. Neato. Okay. Where's my speed? Negative. I don't really want negative speed. Cool. And to cap it off, so I'm going to set this end lifetime to something like 9, so we get a nice pillar. I'm going to do some force over lifetime. This is the last thing I'm going to do. I'm going to turn these into curves. And I'm going to give myself a little bit more strength to play with by setting this to 2. And then curving up. So you can see that that means that over time I'm going to be pushing this in the X direction. Also, I'm going to start simulating this in world space. And simulating this in world X. So basically now as I drag it along, I will leave a trail of smoke. That's mostly housekeeping. Did I switch it back? World? World? Okay, cool. And now I'm going to add a little bit of spin to it by going into Y and telling it, oops, I'm in world Y now. I don't want to move world Y. I want to move world Z. Yeah, there we go. So now I can play the X and the Z off of each other and get a rotation going. Let me turn this way up so that I can see the effect. Oops, that's 50. I need 5. 5? Yeah. Okay. So you can see I have a little bit of a swirly thing going on here. There we go. Let me start this a little below. So you can see this gives me a little bit of rotation to work with. Actually, let's see what happens if I curl this back down. What I'm doing is trying to fake a sine curve here, guys. I hope you appreciate my effort, even though it is a hideous sine curve. There we go. That could be worse. And I'm going to chill this effect out a little bit, going into my X and my Z and setting them to 2 instead of 5. Z, you want to play by the rules over here? Cool. Okay. But it still gives us a lot of extra sort of motion to it. Let me switch my manipulator. Okay. Neat. And also it causes the top to fan out a little bit more. You get a little bit extra information. So you can see how this gives you a little bit more to look at in its animation, in the texture detail of what's going on there, in the motion detail of what's going on there. This is a good way of stepping up your particle smoke so that it looks a little bit more like this, though let's face it, these are different things. Though we could make an explosion thing. I'll show you an explosion thing next time. Explosions are really fun, and we won't have to make assets again because I already made this one. So let's do an explosion next time. Anyway, it's a little bit more like this or that. It's actually not that far off from that. Maybe a little bit of this. Maybe some of that. It's not that far off from that, actually. A little less like this. Anyway, I hope this has been educational for you. And until next time, I'm Ryan Gatz. Check back here for more animation, more particles, and more game art stuff. Talk to you later.